Hi again then guys, and welcome to another throwback car review from the very first Project Gotham game, on the original Xbox of course, and we've only got 3 vehicles left to review, which in other words means we're halfway through the first game, in terms of reviewing the unique cars that were no longer featured in any of the games after this. Now this one is one of the highest profile cars that was not continued on. It is of course the Ferrari F355, but in particular the Spider. Now the Spider is probably my preferred version. I tend to like the open-top versions of exotic cars quite a bit. There's more headroom, they have more of a coast-to-coast, south of France cruiser kind of vibe, and a lot of the cars that I enjoy tend to be more prone toward that anyway. For example, the Maserati Gran Turismo, the Aston Martin DBS, that kind of stuff. But this one is a very interesting car in this first game because the F355 is not a Ferrari that you tend to see around that much these days. There are a few games which feature it, but nowhere near as many as they used to be, because for a while this pretty much was the Ferrari to get. Clarkson famously loved the car, even in a game which you wouldn't necessarily expect to have it, like Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition. I believe it was the remix version of the game. It was one of the best cars in the game, albeit, of course, the F355 as tuned by Gambala. Also in the older Forza games, it was a very good Ferrari all-rounder to go for, not the fastest or the most powerful thing in a straight line, but pretty compact, not overly heavy, very good through corners. I always thought of this as being like Italy's NSX. It just had that kind of vibe to me. But the funny thing about it in this game is you would assume for a franchise which is, you could argue, very synonymous with Ferraris, perhaps even more so than Lamborghini or other brands, even to the point of having them on the front of the box, it's actually not a good car. And to clarify that a little bit, I'm not saying that this is a slow car by any stretch. In fact, it has among the better stats in the game. The top speed, for instance, is rated as 9 out of 10, which is only 1 point behind the Porsche 911 GT2, which is a very, very fast car. The acceleration is also only 1 point behind that Porsche at 8 out of 10, which is great. That's 1 point more than the Panoz Esperante and the Ford Focus Cosworth that we reviewed last time, so it certainly is not slow in a straight line. As far as handling, well, they give it a fair amount of respect with a 7, which is interestingly on par with the BMW Z3 in this game, another much lower market convertible of course, but to compare that to some of the others, that's a little bit better than the Panoz, which I would certainly disagree with. It's 2 points lower than the Porsche, and to compare it to, once again, that Ford Focus Cosworth, it's only 1 point off of the handling rating that they give that car. Now, 2 of the 3 specs I agree with. The top speed is good. The acceleration is good, especially off the line, and you can see that in the video, but what you can also see is that this car is very twitchy. Through corners, it's extremely slippery, very twitchy, and borderline neurotic. It feels like the car cannot keep its head focused in the game. It wants to dart around all over the place, and typically I would expect handling like this more from something like a Lotus, like a first generation Elise, something like a Sport 190 version, for instance, in the older Gran Turismo games, which is, yes, a very fast little car, but is more of a professional driver's machine. Now, you could argue that's a good thing, to have this Ferrari demand more respect, and maybe that's what they were going for, but what it comes off as to me is, put simply, a vehicle that's not really worth the effort that it requires to win races with it. You are far better off using, for instance, that Porsche GT2, which I've also reviewed here on the channel, which is a way faster car. Acceleration, top speed, and crucially, the cornering is better as well, and you can even see that in the video. The way that Porsche can take corners, despite the fact it's not even all-wheel drive, compared to this one, there's no contest. This feels more like, honestly, what you'd expect from something like a TVR. And now, I love TVRs, but at a certain point a vehicle becomes more effort than it's worth, and to me this car kind of feels like that. There are, without question, certain Ferraris which deserve to be challenging. That is simply the case. Of course, something like a Formula car or a race car in general, but I'm talking even more street level stuff. A Scuderia, For instance, it's a car that is more hardcore, it demands more respect. If you do look more to the track-focused world, even within Project Gotham, I recently reviewed the FXX in Project Gotham 4, and that demands more respect because of how fast it is. It is a professional machine. I'm all for a challenging car. There are certain sports cars, supercars, even non-exotics, a hot hatch of some kind or a super saloon, which are more challenging, but the crucial thing is, many of those cars that are more challenging tend to be more rewarding when you get them right. Something like, for instance, a Shelby Cobra. It's one of the fastest classic sports cars out there. A Lancia Stratos. Challenging to drive, but what a dominating rally legend. This one, on the other hand, to me it feels like it's just challenging almost for the sake of it. Even if you drive it perfectly, it's still not as good as something like the Porsche GT2. But maybe it's just me. That was my experience with the car, so of course if you are a Project Gotham fan, maybe you'll like to go back and play some of the older Project Gotham games and enjoy these cars. Give me your thoughts. If you have a chance to jump back on the game and drive this car, see what you think. I personally think it's more trouble than it's worth, which is something that I don't say about that many cars in that many games, to be honest. So this is a surprising standout, because the F355 actually tends to be one of the most respected Ferraris. So it's somewhat surprising to me that it would be kind of a bad car in this game. Overall though, that's it for my thoughts. Of course, stick around on the channel for more Project Gotham content, and click here on screen to check out the content that I've already done from Project Gotham 1, 2, 3, and 4. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.